All right, everybody, the Outlet Pass is back, and we have a banger of an episode for you guys today. We're going to be covering all of the latest NBA COVID news, including the Kevin Durant situation. We're going to be breaking down what happened and why we think the NBA is royally screwing up this year. We're also going to talk about the Dallas Mavericks and the Miami Heat, two teams that looked great last year coming out of the bubble, but have really been struggling. So I'm going to send you over to my man, John, who's going to give us the rundown on the Kevin Durant situation.
Yeah, obviously, I'm sure by now, I'm not sure when this video will be coming out, probably like Monday or Tuesday, but obviously everyone's kind of seen the Kevin Durant situation. It's just clearly, to me, it looks like the NBA is just putting revenue and like just notoriety before like player safety. Just look at other leagues. Like the NHL's had next to no cases. Like the football after like they had some problems with it, but like the NBA, they're still trying to have an all-star game. I mean, it's difficult enough to have a season, but you're trying to fly all the stars in the league into a potential super spreader event. Why? Like, that just tells you, I feel like they're not taking this seriously enough. Like, as long as, like, the Kevin Durant yesterday, I have a feeling if he wasn't a major player, they never would have let him into the game in the first place. They would have just erred on the side of caution. And to me, it sends a signal that, like, player safety is not important, but just making money is. And I think that they were the first league to shut down last year. That was a good look for them. I feel like they've kind of deviated from that.
I think what was really hopeful as fans in the league was how the NBA was able to operate the bubble and seeing how successful it was. And then for them to be back in season and going from city to city, crossing over state to state, it's really alarming to see their COVID rates go back up and player safety to almost not even seem like a factor to them. Just honestly, the idea of having an all-star game makes no sense. Player safety has to be a top priority. And as fans, as much as we want to see those games happen, like we also understand we want these players to still live and have their lives.
Yeah, but I think the All-Star game is like definitely like every other league. That's the first thing they cut out. Like they're not even considering having one. And I mean, like obviously I like the All-Star game, but I'd rather have like an NBA finals and like an NBA playoffs. So I feel like that's an obvious thing to cut out, and like that shows you like they're not taking this as seriously as I feel like other leagues are. And just they have to be better with that, I feel like.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to see. I mean, I think really the main symptom of this is we're seeing that the NBA is starting to feel the financial crunch that this whole thing is, putting on them. I know ratings were definitely down in the bubble. I haven't seen numbers about this season, but I would imagine they're not as good as they want them to be. Given the shortened season they had last year, they've lost a ton of revenue. So I do understand why they want to increase revenue. But as you guys said, this is not the right way to do it. I mean, when you have the best player in the league, the face of the league, LeBron James, saying he doesn't want to play in the All-Star game, I think that says something about how the rest of the league feels. And, coming back to the Kevin Durant situation, I mean, it just makes no sense what they did. Like, if he was why can't he start the game and then he comes off the bench and then they take him out for the rest of the game and he had a negative test? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, if he was at risk, and couldn't start the game, he never should have been in the building in the first place. So it's just so confusing to me. And I think the NBA really needs to tighten up and, fix their stuff because, if this keeps happening, people are going to tune out and, we might get to the point where they mishandle it and we have to shut down, and nobody wants that.
For sure. I think obviously the goal is to get through the season and hopefully as like we get more towards the spring, things can begin to like clear up a little bit. Maybe like as the vaccine's coming out, like maybe fans can start coming back in. But if people just completely ignore it, they're gonna have to shut down eventually. And I don't know, because you don't want to get in like major games and like have like LeBron and AD both out, and then that's when the year begins to become really illegitimate. So.
I mean, as a fan, we want to see the games. We know that the NBA generates most of its revenue through television, merchandising, the tickets, sponsorships, and a lot of that has taken a hit. So it'd be really interesting to see like what, financial managers of the league are going to do to change that, and what other ways are they going to involve their fans of the league and ensure their player safety, follow those protocols to make sure we're still able to have games and still keep players healthy. I'm just players, but members of the team, right? There's so many sacrifices being made. But yeah, let's transition on to the Heat and the Mavs. And Tom and John, I don't know about you guys, but definitely seeing the battles and the way we saw the team fight throughout the bubble was really exciting. And to see those organizations come together and say, we're going to make our mark, our superstars on the front line, and say, we're here to take the throne, here to come from my Lakers. And they have not been producing at levels we were hoping to see. And what do you guys see as some of their major struggles?
I mean, for both teams, injuries have been a problem. Like Dallas and that Porzingis, and even now, you can tell he does not look the same. Like he's looked a little slower and not as forceful. Like just not moving as well. That's definitely been a factor. But I think, like in Miami's case, Butler was out, but they were a team last year that played with a lot of heart, a lot of grit. I feel like they really embraced the bubble. But I think going in, people were not as high on them. They upset the Celtics and the Bucks. I think a question has to be asked: was that run somewhat of a fluke last year? Are they actually like a team that's capable of winning the Eastern Conference and going to the finals again? Because I'm starting to feel like, I mean, I'm not right here yet, but I'm starting to feel like that run was somewhat of a fluke. I mean, the only truly established All-Star is Jimmy Butler. I mean, Bam Adebayo's been solid, but he's only a one-time All-Star. I mean, it's overall just. I mean, they've had some games like even at full strength, lost to the Hornets the other night. Just overall, it's not been as good as it should be. And I think expectations, I think for both teams were set a little high. Like after the Mavs almost beat the Clippers last year, Miami obviously made that big run. I think they are a little ahead of their timeline than people expected. And I think sometimes that can set unrealistic expectations. Like I think both are going to end up in the playoffs still, but for Miami's case, I'm starting to think they're not really a contender in the East as much because the Nets, obviously, with that big three, they're going to be there. Milwaukee's good. Philly's been unexpectedly solid. And Embiid's having an MVP caliber season. And the Celtics, so they can get some bench depth. I mean, they're going to be a problem. So I think the East is obviously a lot more competitive, so that's going to be tough for Miami. And then for the Mavericks, the West, I think they need a third star right now. They don't really have that third guy. So I think that's something they need to find.
The Heat are in an interesting position because I think as an organization, their mindset, that grit and grind mentality to go out there and put everything on the floor, they thrived in that in the bubble because there were no fans. That was like less drama and noise that they had to deal with. They had themselves and they had the opponents. And that's what their focus was. I think that's what really carried them into the finals. And, despite, where the records are for both of these teams respectively, I think they can still tough it out in the season and, become contenders. The Mavs right now are sitting at 9-14, right? They're like 14th in the Western Conference, which is as competitive as you can get. And Luka is still producing. Like he's still putting it all on the floor. He's still having, season highs, but it hasn't been enough to keep him afloat. So it'll be interesting to see how other players are also going to step up. Tom, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So I have two thoughts. The first thought about the Mavericks, defense. They need to play better defense. Over the last 10 games, their defensive rating has been worse than the Nets. And we all know that the Nets have no interest in playing defense. And
Nets don't have a defense.
No, they don't. They don't. And, Dallas does not have the offensive firepower that the Nets do to overcome that. And in addition to that, they're the worst in the league in 3-point percentage this year. And, that might be a fluke, but if you're going to be this high-powered offense, low defensive team, you have to be making your threes. And I think that kind of starts with Luka. I think he's under 30% for the year, which is not good. So I think they really need, across-the-board improvement on three-pointers and on defense. Now, in terms of the Heat, John, I'm going to kind of build off your point. I truly do think that their bubble run was a bit of a fluke. I think they capitalized on a unique situation, and I think that they had the right leadership and the right mentality to come in there and, to win games and take it from teams that weren't ready. But honestly, looking at that roster, I don't see stars. I see a lot of good role players, but I don't see stars, and this is a star-driven league. Like Tyler Hero, he's a good player, but he's not a star. Maybe he will be in a couple years, but right now, he's not a star. And Bam's great defensively, but he really can't get you a bucket when you need them. They really only have one guy, Jimmy Butler, who can get you a bucket like that in crunch time. And I just think they're kind of getting exposed over a larger sample size that they're not really a great team. They just had a great run.
Yeah, I think that coming off your point, I think in the NBA, well, obviously everyone likes the story of like the underdog team working hard and beating like the projected winner. The reality is, especially in the NBA, that does not happen that often. And there's a reason it was Cavs Warriors in the finals for 4 straight years. They were just by far the 2 most talented teams. And even if like a team came close, they weren't gonna really beat them. So I think, yeah, like I think Miami's a good team. I think they're not. I feel like we're kind of like bashing them. I think they will eventually figure things out, get into the playoffs in the East. But I don't like. I think from a talent perspective, they're not better than Milwaukee. They're not better than Brooklyn. They're not better than even. I think even the Celtics and Sixers honestly have more talent just on the roster. So honestly, I think from a talent perspective, they just aren't really that. They just aren't going to be able to sustain what they did last year. And for Dallas, I think they do. They have talent, but still, I think we'll see. I think they have to be able to shoot better, play defense. I mean, they signed Josh Richardson, who hasn't been able to be that active in the games he's played, just because hasn't been able to play enough. But I think once they get into I think they'll both improve. I don't think Dallas is going to be 14th in the West when the season's over. I think that's a fair statement to make, but they have work to do on both teams.
I think the player that most eyes are on right now, as far as the Mavericks go, is definitely Kristaps Porzingis, and he's a transcendental talent. Like the way he's able to move and see the floor as a 7'3" player is phenomenal at times, but when he's extended at the top of the key with Steph Curry guarding him and he pulls up for 3 and he's not going to move the ball to try to get himself an easy like 12-footer or right at the basket, that's when there's definitely some issues going on the offensive flow. To have him touted as one of your top guys and for him to be making consistently poor decisions like this, he has to be smarter. Both teams, for sure, have to be smarter in their decision making on both ends of the floor. And I think they have the talent to do it. They could definitely move around some pieces. And it's almost like, as much as that run was questionable for the Heat last year, we saw how much that team was willing to give. So what's going to change, right?
I do want to say I agree with you on that Porzingis point. He has to be more enforceful. Like I see so many times, like he's got a smaller guy on him, and all he does is just takes like a contested jump shot. I'm like, back him down a little bit. Yeah, you're like he's a center, obviously. I mean, just gotta be more impactful, which I'm assuming he's capable of doing. He's too passive. I feel like sometimes, and I feel like you kind of need that interior presence for Dallas because right now they don't really have it.
Yeah, the Mavericks and the Heat, 2 teams that definitely need to right the ship. So that's going to do it for us today on this episode of the Outlet Pass. We thank you all for watching. And, we're going to hit you with some more content soon. So stay tuned. Thank you guys.